Okay, so it is 6:31. We're starting the July 16th CPA committee meeting. Did everybody get everything they needed to get in the email?
Yes.
Any minute changes from the June meeting? No. Okay. Someone want to make a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve
The,
the minutes as.
I'll second that.
thank you. Everybody okay? Good, great, thank you.
I have to abstain
Yes,
because I wasn't
you're
at the
not
meeting.
there.
I will abstain also.
Right. Jamie, did you vote?
Who's the second?
Greg?
Greg.
And
Yeah.
Dan. So we have the one proposal in front of us is from Valley CDC, the first time homebuyer program. I had a couple of questions that is what this printout is. Some of them are, like, my questions were a little nitpicky, so they may not be useful to everybody. Dan, you might appreciate them. So the request is for $75,000. The full amount is what's requested for the CPA of the project. And it's to provide first time home buyer assistance to people at 80% or below of the area median income. It's basically to pay either, some of the closing costs, down payment, whichever, however folks want to use it. And wrapped in that is financial education and counseling services for folks, as well as some lead testing requirements, and the homes that are purchased will remain affordable for 5 years. If people move out before the 5 years are up, they have to pay back some of the financial assistance that's provided through this program. So I'm going to open it for questions, but we also do have two people here that can answer questions.
Why do you always look
I
at
know,
me?
I always look
You
at
always
you
have questions.
always saying to my right.
I guess I'd like to hear from the applicants a
Yeah.
little, kind of an overview of, especially the educational part, because it's, I guess both parts, but I mean, the educational part first, because that seems to then transition over to the financial.
Sure. So does everybody know Valley CDC? People are familiar with Valley? I figured so. So I'd just like to start off with a little story about this young lady who purchased a home last summer in East Hampton, and I'll just pass those around for you. This young lady bought a house in the Plain section last year with our assistance, and she went to the bank and found out that she could afford a mortgage of $150,000. And she was disappointed because she knew she would have to move out of the area, and she wouldn't be able to find a home, locally that she would be able to afford. So she came in to meet with us, to strategize what else could she do in order to stay in the area and find a home locally. So with our assistance, we were able to tell her about a loan program that could help her buying power by waiving the private mortgage insurance, reducing the interest rate, and even providing a subsidy to pay some of the interest on the loan for being at or below 80% of the area median income. And this is the Massachusetts Housing Partnership One Mortgage. And I brought some information about that I'll leave with you. So when she went back to the bank and asked about this one mortgage, she had to go to a different bank because the bank she was working with didn't offer this particular program. Her buying power went from $150,000 to $180,000. And she happened to have perfect timing because this Equity Builders program was available at the time through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. I'm only aware of one person last year that got it in East Hampton. Plenty of people got this money, but the bank has it, and you could buy anywhere with this money across the state. So, by coming in and connecting with us and working with us, she was actually able to buy a house for $180,000 in the Plain section. And she is a single parent with one child, a household of two, makes around $40,000 annually. She's a project manager for D.A. Sullivan over in Northampton, and she works locally, and she was able to stay locally. She had attended our first-time home buyer class, went to the bank, only to be disappointed that she wasn't going to be able to afford anything in this area, except for maybe a house that needed a lot of work at $150,000. Maybe one or two come up a year that need tremendous amount of rehabilitation. So I bring this story because she was one of our success stories. She had automatic equity in the property by getting a grant from Freedom Credit Union for $14,000 towards her down payment and $1,000 towards the closing costs. And she accessed, the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Fund Board One Mortgage, and really did a great job. Had she not come in, though, she would have probably looked in Holyoke and said, no, I'm not going to buy. I'm going to continue to pay my high rent. And at the time, she was living in a one-bedroom apartment with her daughter in order to save money to be a first-time buyer. So her daughter had the bedroom, and she was bunking on the couch in a one-bedroom apartment, paying about $1,000 a month for rent for that apartment. So she's actually paying less than her rent now, owning this house for $180,000, building equity and building wealth. And we see this a lot. And this is the reason why we're coming to you, because we see a lot of folks who come in who can't afford to buy here. They live here, they work here, and they end up buying in Holyoke or Greenfield because that's in their range of affordability. Student loans make it difficult for folks to save what they're paying on their student loans. It makes it difficult for them to save for down payment and closing costs. And we see a lot of people that have really worked on their credit and just aren't able to move forward. So I just like to point that out, point that story out to you, because, it kind of puts a face on what we're trying to do here. So, basically we're looking to help 6 households. We would have to meet with about 45 households in order to get 6 of them ready, credit-wise, financially, because they're going to need to have some of their own money in order to do this. $7,500, it's more than that. We all know that it's going to cost, quite a bit more than that to get in a house, between the down payment, the closing costs, home inspections, application fees. I would say you need to have $10,000 to $12,000 in the bank in order to get out there and consider looking at a house if you want to buy these days. And it's very difficult for folks paying high rents to be able to save this money. So really, this is key to why we're here, asking you about this program. So not only Tracy happened to have decent credit, she was lucky. Not all of our folks that come in are in that situation. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're behind in some of their bills. They're struggling. They're trying to get caught up on things. They're trying to pay everything on time, trying to reduce their debt. So it's a variety of things that we do, and it's different for every single household. Some households are going to need to create a savings plan by reducing their expenses. Other households have credit problems, and they're going to need to repair those credit problems before they're ready to purchase a home. Every household we see, has different concerns. We're helping some households reduce their student loan debt through consolidation and income-based repayments, that some households just aren't aware that these programs are available to them and that they could try to reduce their expenses in this way. And just getting people to really look at their finances, look at their bank statements, look at where they're spending their money. People are amazed. After a few months, they're caught back up on their regular living expenses like utilities, electric cable bills, things that most of us take for granted. People are struggling with because they're paying high rents. In this area in general, we're paying higher rents than other areas. So it's going to be very different for every household. Some households might come in 3-4 times and they're ready to go to the bank. Other households I meet with monthly for a year or 2 years. It just really depends on what the household needs. I gave an example in my answers to you Alexis, about the buyer of the East Street property of Habitat for Humanity. She worked with us for a year before she made that application to Habitat and got in that lottery. And if she hadn't taken those steps, she probably wouldn't have been a good buyer for that property. So she took the time to get her debts in order and pay off her debt and get her financial picture in better standing. And she actually qualifies for the mortgage of $145,000 that Greenfield Savings is going to be doing with Habitat for Humanity for that property when they close later this year. I think they're hoping to close by the end of the year or early in January. And we know how it could be delayed, but we'll see. I'm hopeful for her because she's anxious to get in the property. So, people value this service. It's easy to say, I'm gonna fix my budget, I'm gonna work on my budget. But to sit down and do it when you're taking care of kids, working a full-time job, taking the kids to different activities and sports, people just don't have the time. People feel rushed and stressed. And having some place to go where you can sit down for an hour or an hour and a half and go through things on a regular basis to get yourself back on track really is a valuable service to low, moderate income households. If they're not able to take control of their finances, they're not able to move forward in their lives. And I think, I really feel that, it's important for people to be able to do these things. I grew up here in town. I don't live here. I couldn't afford to buy a house here. I bought a house in Springfield and I lived there for 20 years. I'm back around again. But, I grew up here and I couldn't afford to purchase here because I worked for Riverside Industries. I've been a human service worker for years. I just could never. My mother called me every week and say, hey, there's a house down the street. And I'm like, yeah, I can't afford it. So I think it's an important program. And does anybody have specific questions about the structure of the program?
Just hanging around this building a lot. Over the year, there's classes upstairs. Is that run by?
Valley
Next
CC,
door.
yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're over there.
Yep.
Is that what we're talking here with this? Or
Nope,
is-
it's
that's a different-
individual, that's part of it. We would ask people to attend the workshop, but some folks are not ready for the workshop yet. They need to do some pre-work before, they need to work on credit, work on a savings plan. They need to do some work prior to the workshop. The certificate's only good for 2 years. For some folks, it doesn't make sense to jump right in the workshop. They need to work on their finances prior to going.
This is Donna Cabana. She's our home ownership coordinator. I'm Joanne Campbell, executive director. Just those classes are paid for through bank sponsorship. So
Right.
we're not asking for funding for that. So even though we're saying, we're asking for all the money from CPA to run this program, Valley runs a home ownership program basically for Hampshire County. And so we're fundraising for different pieces. So we're asking specifically for this for East Hampton residents. We have all the classes that we provide that are available to anyone, not just Hampshire County, because anyone can come to the classes. We run those with the various banks who support us in East Hampton, Amherst, Northampton, and those rotate 11 months of the year. Sometimes we have 2 a month. And then we, say, for instance, Northampton, we have CDBG money, Community Development Block Grant money, to run programs in Northampton just for Northampton residents. We get some Division of Bank money for mostly for foreclosure prevention still. It's a $23,000 grant, so it's small. So we are pulling pieces, but we thought just showing you the budget for this, we have a home ownership program that's probably $100,000 that supports Donna's full-time expenses, part of my time, and we also have a home ownership coordinator, home ownership education coordinator who does the classes. So, but I thought that you wouldn't be able to see this specifically, but we do have a bigger home ownership for. So if a homeowner in East Hampton came with whether it was foreclosure, whether it was simply, they had a reduction in income and they were struggling to pay their mortgage, or they had a death in the family,
Or they need to make home repairs and they want to set up a budget in order to finance those home repairs.
we're providing those services, and would not be coming out of this piece of it. of the funding, so.
So
But it-
you're asking for 75,000 and 45 goes towards the homeowners, potential homeowners.
Right, for the down payment
Of the
closing costs.
expenses of the 30, what time period is that 30,000 spread over for?
18 months.
18 months, okay.
And it's individual one-on-one counseling, typically an hour, hour and a half per session. People don't like to sit and talk about finances for 2 hours. You have a question?
Yeah, before somebody gets into your program, do you screen them all? Could you
We
screen all the people?
we do a financial intake, yes,
All
we
right, so but
do.
what happened if you okay somebody for one of these loans, and they, after like 4, 5, 6 months, they have to bail out, they can't pay their mortgage? What happens then? What happens to the money that we gave them? What happens to the property? Just what happens?
We would provide services to that person, counseling, and we would advise them based on their particular situation. We work with a lot of people
Well,
that
say
are
they
in
say
that.
they just can't afford it for some reason. They just
Then we're
lost
gonna
their job.
encourage them to sell it. We're
Yeah,
gonna encourage
what
them to
happens to the
sell.
money that we gave them? What happens to that cash?
It would be
Gets
repaid.
recaptured.
It would be recaptured.
All right, they come back to us?
It would come back to you, yes, it would. You
So
would be
there's-
the one with the lien against the property, yes.
Okay.
Well, the city, yeah.
Yeah, the
The
city,
city.
yeah.
Now, of course, that's
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
We could vote on it.
the purpose of the education, obviously, is, you know, that someone's gonna get a conventional mortgage, they're gonna have a regular job, but yes, I mean, things happen to folks, there's a death in a family or a loss of a
Right,
job,
right.
but people can come back to us and then try to work that through, and sometimes, you know, with, Donna is like the foreclosure guru in Hampshire County. She worked for HAP for 12 years before she came to Valley, so not that we're not talking about foreclosure here, but she knows, you know, banks will hold off 6 months or pay interest only. She knows loan
Yeah.
modification. She knows everything, unfortunately, that you have to learn when you're doing foreclosure.
Right, and if there doesn't seem to be a resolution for their situation, we're gonna encourage them to sell the property. You know, I mean, that ultimately, if people aren't able to move on and get back to work or get their income back, you know, that is what we are encouraging them to do, to sell.
Should we get involved in any short sales?
Yes, they're not short sales, they're long sales.
Well, yeah. Real long.
Is this model something that you already have in place that you've been using, the deferred payment loan, you know, sort of?
It
help
is
me out
a
with
model
that?
that has been used.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the Equity Builders Program through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, they just approved their second round of funding yesterday. It's very limited, it's statewide, and when you're talking a regional bank, very few people in East Hampton will get it. When you're looking at People's Bank, maybe one person might get lucky.
Candy Bank.
So they
But
use the
through Valley-
same,
Through Valley CDC, have you,
We-
is this something new for you, or is it something that you?
we have done a program like this through the town of Amherst several years ago, probably back in 2007 or 8.
Yeah, Donna's been with us for 3 years. I've been at Valley for about 17 years. So we've done mortgage subsidy programs with Amherst where people got $50,000, so sort of a much larger piece because the housing is so much more expensive there. We've done down Northampton, we have down payment money, which is grant money. It's only $3,000, so it's a grant. There's no
They don't
there's no
record a
liens
lien.
or
It's through
anything against
CDBG.
that property.
And
We've
Since you
worked-
bring that up, I know that was
Yeah.
one of Alexis' questions about the grant versus loan. Can you just clarify that a little bit for me? Because I kind of read the answer, but I'm not sure I fully grasped why.
Well,
it's
it is a grant.
Okay.
And you're going to forgive it over a period of time, but you don't want people who just plan to maybe live in this house for 6 months, fix it all up,
And sell.
and resell it and make a profit and walk away with your money. You don't want to encourage that. And I think programs have seen this in the
Sort of a
past.
vesting period for them.
Right,
So that they.
right.
Gotta stay
Oh,
5 years.
They want to
get
make,
the value.
you want them to make a commitment. Plus recordation of some sort of document is required in order to count it on the housing inventory.
So
What is recordation? Can you help me with that?
Recording something in the register, you're gonna record a mortgage, a lien against the property, so that way you can count it on your housing.
Would they not already have a lien against the property or mortgage? I mean, they're not
Yes,
gonna buy
it would be a
they-
secondary lien, it would be below the mortgage, yes.
below the bank mortgage, so they'll have
Yeah.
a lien for the bank, but you're not, the city of East Hampton's not protected by that. You need to have your own record so that you get notified when the home is being sold. So that you could then have a lien and then you can recapture the funds. So if someone sells it'll specifically say first year, second year, third year. So if it's the fifth year, then it's going to be, nothing will be paid back. But if they sold in a year, and someone might have to move because of a job or something, but they're going to understand in us explaining, here's a $7,500 lien, it's going to be recaptured if you move in less than 5 years, then they're going to know that if they have to sell in the second year, that they're going to have to pay back the city of East Hampton, some portion of that. So it's protection. I mean,
That's the main reason is the fund recapture, essentially, for that
No,
for
I
that
think the
structure,
main
is that right?
reason is so that you can count it on the housing inventory, because it
Oh.
requires something to be recorded. Because Northampton doesn't count the folks that we serve for grants, they don't count them, and they don't record any liens, so they're not able to count those households.
and they feel this money is small enough that it's not worth the extra headache, that $3,000 is, that's just their decision about it. So what we were trying to make an assumption here is that the CPA, you've got a goal of so many housing units coming on the inventory so that you can get your numbers up, closer to the 10%. This is a way, at least temporarily, that you're looking at a goal of 38 housing units a year. So these would go on, our suggestion is that they would go on for 5 years, that they would be counted on the inventory for 5 years. We didn't think with the amount of $7,500, which is not a huge amount of money, that much longer than that, to ask somebody to have a lien on their property for 15 years for $7,500 seems like that's a little too much to ask of somebody. If there's a
Right.
larger amount of money,
Maybe, if you were giving 10 or 20,000, maybe you would ask for a 15-year lien, like the housing rehab programs, there's a longer period lien on the property.
Where did the 7,500 number come from versus, say, 10,000 or something?
Okay, in your packet, and I wanted to make sure that my example was clear, so I've written this up for you. So in Tracy's example, she purchased a home for $180,000. So she's required by the lender, the loan itself requires a 3% down payment. So it would be $5,400. Average closing costs on conventional loans, now governmental are gonna be a little bit higher, but average closing costs on conventional loans is gonna be around 3% of the loan amount as well. So another $5,400. So the total cash needed for this household, they're gonna need more for inspections and stuff, but just for down payment and closing costs is around $10,800. If the household was able to get a grant of $7,500, they would only need their own out-of-pocket funds of around $3,300.
So again, why 7,500 versus, say, 9,000, 10,000?
well, this is the 3%
We
numbers.
feel that buyers should be planning and saving. We want to encourage planning and saving, because once you get in the house, you still need to continue to plan and save, because it's always something. It's always going to be some maintenance issue, something that you're going to have to deal with. So we want to encourage planning and
Little
saving.
skin in the game.
Exactly.
around that,
And you're-
is that the idea?
Exactly.
In your experience, the $3,000-ish range is like something that people can attain.
People come in and they say, I got $3,800, and I'm like stuck, I can't get to 5,000, This is what I see, These are things I see every day when folks come in and they're telling me their stories of how, they're paying their student loans, they're trying to get ahead, they're not making that much at their job with all this education that they have and this student debt that they have, they're in the $30,000 range and they're struggling and they're paying high rent.
This number could be many different numbers. We felt
Every
this was
household is gonna
was a good
look a little
place to
different.
sort of start. A smaller amount of money makes it a little bit harder for the family. Too much might be, you might feel, gee, that's a lot to give to somebody. So we came up with an example that we thought sort of gave us some sense of this number is a reasonable number.
What would a mortgage payment be on a house like that with that much money down?
It's gonna be just under $1,000
So,
with
well,
today's rates.
So if somebody can afford to pay rent, they obviously can afford to pay the house.
Exactly,
They're like-
and they're building equity
Yeah,
instead of
right.
instead of making the landlord rich.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
So
Getting back to the Tracy example, obviously she wasn't under this program. You mentioned grant, if I wrote it down right, 14,000 she got from Freedom.
it's the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston.
Is that the one you mentioned down here, this model equity, or different? You just mentioned one at Boston, you said probably we wouldn't get much out here.
Federal
Right,
Home Loan,
the Federal
yeah.
Home Loan Bank of Boston, yes. They have member community banks that borrow money from them, and they give back their profits a couple times a year. They give back some of their profits. They have to operate, but they give back.
I thought Bank of Boston got bought out.
No,
by-
this is the
by-
Federal Home Loan Bank.
Federal Home
Totally
Loan Bank.
separate.
All right,
So they give back some of their profits annually to first-time home buyers that are below 80% of the area median income. So if you're working with a small bank like East Hampton Savings, maybe some of those grants will come to East Hampton. But if you're working with a more regional bank like Freedom, they're out in Ludlow, they're in Springfield, they're all around. You know, those 10 grants that they get are not going to all come our way. We try hard to get as many of them as we can. Last year we actually had 6, which we felt pretty happy to have 6 of our clients were able to access that money. We were pretty happy last year. This year I'm only aware of 2 households that were able to access the funds. So these grants are available on a first-come, first-served basis with a signed purchase and sale agreement with a member bank who has applied for the money and been awarded the money. This current round that's going on now, it just started yesterday. We have Berkshire Bank, Freedom Credit Union, Greenfield Savings, and People's Bank.
East Hampton didn't go in?
Not on the second round. I didn't see them on the list on the second round. So, you know, maybe the first round they were like, yeah, we're not going to do that on the second round. It's a tough program. They want a lot of documentation. They want the client's bills. They really want to know that you're ready for this before they give you their money. They're pretty tough. It's pretty tough underwriting. There have been many of these programs. HAP Housing has done several programs through the BAT program, Borrowers Assistance Program, was a government initiative before the Bush administration.
Before
Then it
the
became the
home-
American Dream
Home buying assistance
program. And
And I should say Valley did a number of first-time home buyer programs with East Hampton through the Community Development Block Grant Program when that was a priority for DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development in Boston. And it really is, it's not competitive anymore to go after CDBG for some home buying programs, so.
And we've seen a decrease in these programs. Most of the money available has gone to the foreclosure crisis in recent years. You know, money that's been available in housing has mostly gone to foreclosure prevention. So we haven't seen very many grant programs in several years. There was one recently for Belchertown. I think they had a couple grants, just a few, and that I believe was through CDBG money as well.
John,
So-
did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually would like clarification on the subordination agreement.
So if a household wanted to refinance or take an equity loan, you're in second position on the property. So they would have to come and ask for permission in order to do that. And you would have to agree to fall junior to the new financing. So it also gives us an opportunity at that point. At that point, you could refer them to us. We could evaluate that client. How are they doing? Are they making a smart decision? Is this a good move? Or are they going to the money tree or something and getting a bad deal?
Do they
You
come
know,
to
so
us or do they come to you?
they probably would initially contact you, and then you would, because you're the
You could
one
refer.
holding the lien, and then you would refer them back to us for an evaluation, and what do you think? Should we do this or not?
Some community, you know, what usually happens is if somebody was coming and wanted to refinance, usually what municipalities do is they would agree to subordinate if they're simply changing the interest rate. They're going from a 5% to a 4%, so that's a good thing. If maybe they're explaining that they need a new roof and that seems reasonable that seems reasonable, but if they're
They have
taking
the
cash,
bid.
if they're taking cash out, you know, they're taking cash out for whatever reason. To
If
pay
they're
off
dumping
on
their credit cards on,
or you can say no.
You can say
You're
no.
not gonna refinance because you're gonna.
pay us off if you want to do
If you
it.
wanna do that, right, pay
And
us
so
off
that
first.
does amount to a lien. And then the
Yes.
last thing I wanted to ask is just had you considered, since you might have the possibility of sustainability, if regardless, when the house is sold, that the payment is made back, because then you could look at that as sort of passing that on to future home buyers. If regardless, not forgiving it after
Right.
5 years, it's generous, but I wonder if there isn't the possibility of having them continue the program by paying back what
I mean, it's saying it's always due back.
it's always due back. So whenever the house is sold, or with the condition that it's sold at a profit. So if
Right,
it,
make
if it
sure
makes any more than...
Maybe you have some kind of a mathematical
Auto.
equation in there.
Right, and I
Because-
only propose that because then it would create sustainability for the program. You wouldn't have to come back to us to redo this again, you'd have it
Right, it would like.
self-generating.
Yep. Well, most of the folks that we're working with are gonna take the one mortgage, and there's a subsidy attached to that that is also recaptured. So, you know, we had talked about it, and, you know, we don't wanna take all the equity. We want them to be able to be move-up buyers and be upwardly mobile. So, you know, we feel they're gonna have to pay the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Fund Board back the interest subsidy,
program.
because they're gonna get a discount on the interest rate if they use that particular program. And if they have children under 6 and they now de-led the property, they're gonna have to pay Mass Housing back for the de-letting loan. So we have concerns about, you know, robbing the equity from the poor, low, moderate income, first-time buyer. So really, that would be our concern.
If we give it 75 grand, where does that money actually go? They have a fund there, or they have a bank account, or I mean, is there any way of us knowing if you're tap into the 75,000, how many people actually got your funding, so we'd have an idea what's going on? Is that possible?
What normally happens in other situations where the down payment is coming from the municipality is that we income qualify the household. We have an application process that you would approve or planning staff would approve, and people have to be pre-qualified for a bank, and we collect all the income documentation, make sure they're under 80, and that they've got a purchase and sale for a home, and the bank is ready to close, and they've got a commitment letter. And then we would be working with the attorney for the bank, the attorney with the buyer, and then we would come to the city, I'm gonna say to Jamie,
Right.
and say, we're ready to close, we need 7,500, it would be made payable to
The attorney
the,
and the buyer.
So
and then
he-
you would cut the check.
So he would know where the 75 grand is then,
Yep.
Yeah.
or she would know where it is.
Oh, yeah,
And-
but it
and
wouldn't come to Valley, it doesn't come through Valley's books, it goes directly to the buyer
And their
the
attorney to an
All
escrow.
right,
It
so
goes
I
into an
could
escrow.
ask her,
Yeah.
how are they tapping into our 75,000, and she could tell me, well, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4, we got nobody.
You wouldn't be handing us over the full amount of money. You would be holding on to that down payment assistant money, and we would be
Until-
billing you as we met with households, you know, as services were provided. So
Jimmy,
it
does
wouldn't
that-
all be.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we do it for any
Yeah.
applicant that is not an organization of the city. You know, when the church did their
Painting.
renovation, the city held on to the money, and when they had presented us with an invoice that showed that they had paid their contractor, we reimbursed them. When we did the housing rehab program, that was done, the city held on to the money, was put into an account, and as those costs were needed, as those monies were needed to pay contractors or do inspections, in that case, we paid Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to reimburse them for their costs that they had already put out.
It would be very similar to what you're doing with Pioneer Valley
Yeah.
Planning Commission for the housing rehab.
And the city would continue to collect interest on that money
Right,
as it would be
as it
sitting
was
in
sitting,
a city account.
Are there immediate questions from folks?
You said there's 57 properties that were for sale, and 24 of them were within that range. Is that the $180,000 range?
Between 180 and 220.
Okay, well,
Up to 220, because you'll find households of 4 that can afford up to
Okay.
220.
okay.
You know, I mean, a household of 2 might not be able to at or below 80, but, you know, it's really, every family is gonna be really different, you know, for them.
So what we tried to do is say that there is housing stock.
Right, right.
Available.
Right.
When you look at Amherst,
There's nothing
Yeah.
available. We were only able to give away 2 of the 4 grants during our last program period with Amherst,
Yeah.
because there was only like 1 dilapidated farmhouse for 200,000, and that was it. And I'd say, no, don't buy it.
Right.
That's gonna be a maintenance nightmare.
Other immediate questions from folks? Greg? No, go.
I'll just talk aloud for a second here. So the city becomes a party to the loan for these individuals, not the CDC. You have some overhead related to this program. I imagine the city will have some overhead related to sort of tracking and maybe legal and other things whenever we become party to a loan. Is that, I don't know enough about these things, Dan, but I guess I wonder the benefits of the city being party to several small dollar value loans versus, say, granting the money. And this is, as I just continue to talk, dovetails into another question that I have, because I'm not the housing guy on this committee, so I'm somewhat of a novice here. But I understand there's some benefit to the city in being able to count through recordation these houses as part of the subsidized housing inventory.
Affordable. Affordable housing inventory.
Oh, is that right? Okay, it's SHI, so that's something different than, anyhow, but there's some benefit for the city in order to be able to have these be countable properties. Is that
We're not gonna
right?
make the 10%, that's your again.
No.
Absolutely no way in the
No.
world.
I mean,
Well, it just,
Right, so I guess the question is, what
Is it
what
actually
really
worth
is
it?
that benefit? I mean, like, what does the city truly gain by having these be countable, these 6 or 12 or however many these are gonna be over?
Right, 'cause they're not actually-
We're giving 7 or 8 people a chance to own a home, is what we're doing.
Oh, no, he's saying why bother with the lien?
Well, yeah,
And the
yeah,
potential
right,
overhead that
right.
goes along with being
Well, right.
a loan, having a bunch of loans out there.
Right.
And so I kind of want to have a better understanding. This is not really,
Right, for us,
this is
that's-
sort of an
Right.
internal conversation, but
If
what
it's
really,
not
what
going to
really
be
is,
critical mass,
Right, then why bother?
why not just make it a gift?
Yes. Right?
I get, or what is the benefit? How important is it to the city or to the administration? Like, what does it enable the city to do by counting these properties?
the only thing, we're under the 10%.
Yep.
So if you're under the 10%, and CDC is a perfect example, they came with a Parsons Village. They went through the planning board turned them down. They then turned around and came back with virtually the same plan, and I don't want to put, under a 40 feet. And because we weren't under 10%, it's much more stringent. It's much harder to stop that development or limit that development, what the planning board wanted to limit. It goes to the zoning board of appeals, but the zoning board of appeals has a much higher standard, I guess, to be able to not approve the function. But 7, in reality, 6 homes is not gonna make a difference. I mean, we're like,
So far behind it.
yeah, we're like 6, I wanna say in the 6, 8 maybe. And that's
How
with,
many more homes would?
I mean,
We're
that's
supposed to be
with,
adding 38 a year.
and that's with Parsons Village coming online
Yeah.
and 15 Cottage. Those, we're still
Way
only
under.
like 6. I mean, this wouldn't even make a dent. I mean, so in that sense, it really, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, would have very little effect from the housing.
So I'm sort of a financial
And there's
administrator.
tons of, I won't say tons, there's a lot of affordable housing, mostly in the rental area, but a lot of the big developers don't choose to put that under a deed restriction, because that limits their ability to sell. So there's a lot of affordable rental use. I'm not sure about affordable ownership units. But that can't be used unless an owner is willing to put
Deed restricted.
a deed restricted for 30 years to count for a 10%. So.
So hearing that, it makes me think that the structure of this being a 5-year payback loan and the benefit there really is in the recapture potential if somebody were to sell and sort of having some recourse essentially on that loan versus having just a straight subsidy grant or something. But I do, I guess, question the value of the city taking on being a party to a bunch of small dollar loans from an administrative overhead, legal, complex. I'm somebody who likes to keep things simple when
Possible.
given a choice.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents there. If anybody else has other thoughts.
Jamie, do you think maybe the next meeting we could have somebody from the city that could, Melissa, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jessica might be a
Okay.
good person. I don't know what her availability is. You know, as far as the administrative part of the city goes, Valley is doing 99% of that work. The CPA, there's some administrative stuff for getting the payments out from the CPA accounts to Valley. And
Are there
there's
legal
some-
costs though in the city? I mean, if the city contracts, doesn't somebody on legal have to look at that?
We're
Mortgage,
not
mortgage
actually
and note.
contracting because they're getting a grant from the CPA.
They're getting a loan.
No, sorry, who's they?
The home buyer, let's say. I mean, I understand there's the other portion of this, the $30,000,
Right.
but I'm actually thinking more about the loans to the home buyers themselves.
Well, that's more the bank dealing with those
Well, no,
issues now.
the city would have to create a note and mortgage. I mean, we have some samples that the city has, the city of Northampton has. But, so yes, there is a small piece that the city would have to create a note and mortgage.
And we've got these through the Community Development Block Grant. We've run similar programs. So we have a lot of, we have a Community Development Block Grant person who gets paid some amount of city time as well. So she can work on programs like this for the city and has the expertise to handle the request to, what's it called? Subordinate or closing off an agreement or filing the legal paperwork to begin with.
So we'd be
And it's for-
involving that person.
We would be involved, but it's, you know, it's 6 times throughout the next 18 months.
The buyer's attorney would record the initial liens. We would be typing those documents up. You know, the buyer's attorney would be recording them initially. On the back end, when that person calls you and says, I want to refinance, I have this lien, the bank's telling me I need to contact you, you can refer those folks back to us. We'd be happy to type up a report, meet with them, look at their finances, and send a report in and say, this is our thoughts. You know, we can't tell you whether to do it or not, but this person's making a good decision, they need a roof, here's a copy of their bid, we feel that you should subordinate this lien. You know, we would do that.
Does that help? I mean, I think you have a really valid point that but I think if we can maybe have Jess come.
Yeah, or if there are specific questions you want answered, if she can't make it, I don't know what her, like I said, I don't know what her schedule is like.
I like what this is trying to achieve as far as making it possible for, you know, lower income, first-time home buyers to be able to buy a home. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in the way that makes the most sense for the city.
Yes. Any other questions right now? You guys probably understand did I tell you how our process works here? Yes. So we'll have one more, if not 2 more, sort of discussion meetings.
Right.
Usually by the 3rd one we make a decision, but not always. And then it'll go to City Council, who refers to, if we approve it, City Council who refers to Finance, so Finance refers
the
back
full
to.
council.
It goes to finance and then goes to city council.
Goes to city council, they send it to finance,
Oh,
back to city council.
Okay, then two steps, the
And then
recommendation
the
or
mayor
not.
sent.
Or not. And you had mentioned, did you want to hear from folks who've used the program? We had had some discussion
Right,
about.
so I was asked if folks should come to this meeting to sort of, that had used the program that could testify to it, and I said not, at least for this meeting, because it's sort of more nuts and bolts for this one. I personally don't need to hear it because I know these programs fairly well, but if other members of the committee feel like that would be beneficial to hear from folks that have had experience with this type of program, totally fine.
I get the need. I don't need to hear the personal stories necessarily.
No?
It was nice having the letters.
Yeah, letters are in there,
Yeah.
of support.
I mean, I guess I always like to give someone an opportunity. Certainly if there's people out there that are really passionate about it. I mean, as nice as a letter is, I always think a personal touch is nicer, so that would be my thing. So I guess I would leave it up to the people who've used it. Use it if they feel passionate enough about wanting to come down here and give us their quote testimonial versus a letter. I mean, I guess that.
I think for most of the folks, we sort of have to say, you really need to come because the committee really wants to hear from you. People, that come home from work, so I
I mean, I don't have a problem with them not coming. You get what I'm saying? I'm just saying I don't want to discourage.
No one begs us to come to public hearings.
I don't want
I did have one lady very
I don't want to
anxious
discourage
come.
someone that really
I
wanted
did
to
have one
come.
person who was pretty anxious to
Okay,
come.
maybe we should invite her then next month.
She's definitely welcome.
Yeah. Do whatever you guys think is best.
Okay.
Please don't feel
Okay,
the
so
need to
maybe we
drag
can find
someone
one or
down
a
here.
couple of people.
But if no one really wants to come, I think
No,
most of
I
us
didn't
have-
realize she had someone who was so passionate.
By all means, reinforce that.
Okay,
Lot of
good.
lot of info here.
Yeah. So if we have any other questions in the interim, I will touch base with you,
Absolutely.
or Jamie will be in touch with you.
We're happy to answer emails,
Well,
questions.
I'd like to thank the committee for having us tonight
Yeah,
and for
thank you.
listening to us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
coming, thanks.
Thanks for coming.
And September, since, if I may change gears for a moment, because you're the CPA committee, is the open house for Parsons Village is September 25th. And we'll be getting information out to the city, but just since I'm here, 10:30 in the morning, so we'll be doing like breakfasts, and probably tandem bagel. And
What was the date of that again?
September 25th, 10:30 at the site. So, thank you again for
Yeah,
all
How
the
complete are you? Keep-
We are 99% complete, so we're still
I
shooting
just
for
drove by it on my
August
way here.
1st. Yeah, there's like a lot of activity going on, but the only thing that won't quite be in is the playground, but it's Allegroni, the city, Allegroni is a great contractor. I mean, it's just, I don't want to jinx myself for the last one.
Before you do the punch list, right?
Yeah, well, there's a punch. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the two other pieces we have are the conservation plan, which honestly, I have to admit that I haven't had enough time, shocking because it's been a whole month, to read it in the level of detail that I want to. Jamie, does that screw us up with approving it at all?
If you guys want to table it to the next meeting, that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. Have you read it?
No, I've been on vacation, so.
Oh.
And I'm in a place where I don't have the I have the iPhone.
Oh, yeah.
And, so if I want to write anything or really look on it, I have to go to a public.
Right,
And then I
okay.
don't want to.
Okay, so I'm not the only one who hasn't read it in detail. So if everybody's okay with it, I'd like to table it to our next meeting.
Can we still talk about
Yes.
just to spend a minute or two talking about the annual meeting and if there's any lessons, things we want to talk about from that?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has, I wish that people were more engaged in that, but you can't force people to come, and the people that come, you can't force to talk, so.
So to that regard,
Yes,
I thought that if we consider moving the annual hearing a month earlier, so it aligns with the decision announcement meeting of the CPA rather than aligning with the sort of start of a new process,
yeah,
maybe that would be of more interest to people.
sure.
So we maybe next year have the annual meeting in May rather than in June. Also, that would allow the committee to make the report, it would be a fiscal year plan rather than being a couple months into the
Yeah.
fiscal year.
Sure, it's fine with me. Good suggestion. So I just want to mention, because Carrie and I had a conversation about it, that the White Brook Middle School football field ran into some bidding issues. There was a school committee meeting hearing where the athletic director, is that
Business manager, I believe.
Thank you. Was trying to report to the school committee about what was going on with it, and it was a very complicated / slightly heated conversation about the football field. And you can watch it. It's It's recorded if you want some really riveting. So they are still going to fix the football field. They had to amend some of their original
They're
ideas.
scaling back what they're doing, right?
They're still doing everything they said they were going to do, just slightly differently.
Okay.
Like they're not. They
Do
were
the
going to.
70 yards, not the 100
Right,
yards.
exactly. It's going to be a mini.
85.
It's going to be a mini football field.
Only planting grass in it.
Right. They, like, some of the irrigation system is different than what they, like,
Yeah.
I don't fully understand it.
So-
They were gonna haul some of the materials away further, and now they don't have to take
Yeah.
those far, so it's not gonna cost as much.
Because basically the bids came in,
The
bids came in too high.
The bids
Yeah.
came in way high.
Way high.
What's way high?
I don't know what they were.
30%
They
higher or
were-
something like that.
They were much
Yeah,
higher
making a
than
number up, it was
expected.
really high.
All right, can I say something there?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was trying to stave off Harry's rant by
Oh, yeah, we like.
bringing this up before.
We need a
We want to hear it.
Opening rants, okay? Initially, it's really got me mad. I mean, really, okay? Worse than a clock. I mean, really. What I like to see done, if it's possible, I like to see what we're supposed to have gotten on paper and what we are actually getting. Okay? That's what I like to see.
Okay.
Now, we're spending 340 or 325, something like that, and it has gone to 700,000. Now, does that make any sense to anybody?
So that's where the bids came in that high.
Yeah,
Double.
twice.
So where'd the estimates come from? that the bids are so
Exactly,
far,
you know?
You know, if I can just,
Go ahead, Dan.
um,
Explain it.
I think going forward, and, you know, I probably won't be with the committee after January, but I think not only the football field, but the boardwalk, and I don't think anyone's against the boardwalk. I think this committee and other committees have to start taking a real close look at what people bring in here for bids, because
Totally
both of
agree.
them,
Totally agree.
both of them came in almost
So
double
different, yeah.
what they sat here and purported them to be, you know what I'm saying? And I know things happen and materials change, but I mean, I guess maybe it shows us that, you know, maybe there's some more questions need to be asked, right?
We
Just
should-
a general
we-
thing.
I'm
we
not
should
admit
be-
to being an idiot when it comes to
And some of
Yeah,
it-
right.
costing these.
Right, and how do you
know? Yeah.
You know,
And the
so
same with-
if you have any suggestions on that, I'd like to be informed, but at the
Right.
same time.
I don't, how do you do it, Greg? I you know, I'm
It
just
should
kind
be
of.
funding after the bid, not before the bid.
And I know the, same with some of the fields in the park, and you know
Yeah.
that, I mean, they
Well, the
weren't
parks
quite as,
actually came in.
they were
Under-
close.
Actually, the soccer field came in on budget.
Right, no, that's what I said, they were much closer, but, you know, and there's always,
Last night.
and there's always that 10%, but I mean, in both of these cases,
Yeah.
it was like.
The 10% with the
like-
city hall.
Right.
Exactly.
But anyway, that's my issue. But I do agree with you, Harry, I would like to see what we actually approved and what we're
What,
actually.
what was supposed to be done and what's actually going to be done?
So in anticipation of this discussion, I emailed the superintendent and got a response from her, which I can pass around. I printed it out, and sorry, only one copy of it. Or I can read it to you.
Why don't you read it?
So basically,
Or paraphrase it.
yes. I'll give you the paraphrased answer first, because that's what she sent me, and I asked for more clarification. She wrote, the project is being constructed and is consistent with what the CPA reviewed and approved. We worked with the general contractor, sorry, this is coming from Doucette, the engineer. They worked from the general contractor on the city's behalf to clarify the detailed design elements and to streamline some of the construction methods and materials used, but the overall intention of the plan remains intact. The general contractor has begun construction and is scheduled to have the project completed by the beginning of August. So I asked her to go on and explain sort of what that meant. And then got a second response from Doucette saying that on behalf of the school department, Doucette and Associates worked with the contractor to clarify detailed design elements and to streamline some of the construction methods and materials used. Examples of such include clarification of detailed inverts and spacing of the field sub-drainage system, and clarification of the depths of drainage materials along those subdrains. Disposing of excess material on town land nearby the project which was in the specifications but not implemented in the contractor's original bid. Another example included a modified methodology that this particular contractor had expertise in for a cost-effective way of creating the field root zone there, which we had evaluated with the project soil agronomist for performance evaluation. Additionally, the general contractor had the irrigation system redesigned based on actual flow testing, which occurred after the meeting with the CPA, which saved money for the project. So that's
What happened to the gentleman that came down here and made this whole proposal in the first place? He was some kind of an engineer, he was a, we gave him like 20 or
That's a
30
Doucette guy,
thousand for a
right?
study.
Yeah.
What happened to that guy?
He was representing Doucette and Associates.
He stayed with it, because I think he had
He's there.
something to do with the football, Friends of Football or whatever.
So, I mean, what they're saying is, from what I'm reading between the lines, is that the CPA gave the money to build a football field with good drainage, and that they're still promising to build that field. And that's, I mean,
This is like buying a used car with no tires. I mean, that's what I look at it. No motor, no rear end. All we got is a shell.
We're having a clock.
We spent 20 grand on a car that you can't drive. There's no steering wheel, no motor, no tires.
Buyer's remorse, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
But the clock works in the car?
And we got the
Yeah.
shell.
Harry, the clock
The radio doesn't work.
The clock's working still. But
If
anyway,
it's at all,
I think it's a shame. I think it's a damn shame.
well, if it's at all possible, I don't know if
You
it
still
is,
want it done.
to address Harry's concern, which I think might be
Yeah.
useful for all of
if
us.
there are specific questions that the CPA would like me to forward to her, because those are responses I got, and I can keep asking for more clarification, or we can invite them to.
I think they need to come in.
They need to
I
come
think they
in.
need to come in and show us.
That'd be great. Have somebody here.
Get them.
But I think the goal is to show what
For 300 grand, I
Right,
think it's
what
what
we're
the-
supposed to get and what we
It
are
might
getting.
actually be useful, I don't know if they'll show us, but like from what the bid they presented us with what the
Before and after.
$700,000 bid was,
Right.
and then what they actually
I
did.
agree.
Yeah, something side by side. I appreciate what you're asking for, Harry. Just so, before and after is what we're looking at. I mean, we
Right.
saw one thing, what is it now?
Yeah, they should have an overlay
So you want
there.
a copy
It
of.
does raise a good question. Should we be getting
Getting real
bids
bids.
before
Yeah.
we make the approvals?
I
That's
remember the lady was here from the Friends of Football, and she said, well, because we asked them about lights. Remember we asked them about lights, and we asked them about putting up stands on both sides of the thing. Oh, if you want, we'd be asking for more money. Well, how much would all that lead to? 800,000 maybe? I mean,
Jamie, is that clear enough?
So you'd like a copy of a comparison of the bids, the sort of
Yeah.
the pre-bid.
And then what they actually ended up doing, like what their final invoice
Something
bill
that a
was.
5-year-old can understand.
And I think the engineer there is a gentleman that could present it.
Yeah.
You should be able
I
to.
mean, in fairness to the superintendent, she probably doesn't have.
No, she shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't have a whole heck of a lot more.
Right.
It's just that, for that project, she was the project
No,
manager.
I'm not saying that she's not in charge, I'm just saying that, in terms of saying this is what we're doing for drainage now
Yeah.
versus this, I don't know if that would be something that.
Right.
Yeah, if we're talking double, I mean, I would say anything over 30-40%,
Yeah.
they should be.
it's
coming
almost
back
too
in,
bad we couldn't send
holding
an
some
engineer
account
down
to
there
what
with
we're
a
doing.
ratio on it so we find out what's going on. At least we have a
It's a
hands-on
big project.
person.
Nope, forget it.
Sounds like they're done in August, it's already July.
So is this something
Money's
that
already
the
spent.
company wants to formalize into sort of
A motion.
discussing, or just how to go forward with?
I don't know.
um,
Let's think about it. I like to think about things.
What was the question?
Oh, if we should formally request like actual bids. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you guys want to start looking at how you're, doing these, giving away the money.
Yeah.
Well, it might be an aid to them to make sure that they're on track,
Yeah.
because it seems that there's some evidence that
They're not.
sometimes they're not.
Shouldn't they come, maybe they should come back in here and show up after the bid's been done.
But if they come back with a proposal that's 10% higher than what it was, they should come back and say, okay, we got a problem, what are we gonna do now?
Right. I mean, 10% you can live with,
Right.
Yeah.
not 100%.
I think most of the time they build in 10%.
Yeah, the 10%
There's always that
is
It's
usually built in.
20%, there are
Or they're always,
20%.
yeah, just like.
Yeah.
They just need to build in a little bit more.
That's right.
100%.
It's not.
Little
Well,
safety margin.
All right, where's that extra 350,000 coming from? That's what I want to know.
Or
Well,
not, they said they didn't, they said they basically have able to cut the cost of grant
Yeah.
back down, if I heard Jamie.
Right, so they
That's what we need to see.
they re-engineered the project to make it work.
Okay,
And
never
they, and
mind.
they,
I get it, never mind.
and the contractor apparently misread part of the specs and thought they had to dispose, there was a lot of trucking involved of a lot of the soil.
Boy, that's a lot of trucking.
You're talking a 100-yard football field here, you're not filling in the Grand
Business,
Canyon.
man.
How can you?
700 grand football field.
I don't
Jamie's just delivering the
All right,
I'm just, don't shoot me.
we're going down
You're
rabbit
okay,
hole.
brother.
Anything
For
else?
700, you could do a full estate fields.
No?
No, nothing else.
Anything
Care
else?
about budgets?
Well, I just had one thing, again, if I could note, Jamie,
Yeah.
that for the Park and Rec, that the soccer field did come in.
Good job, Andy.
And it is underway, actually, from what John told me, they've got 90 days to finish it or something along those lines.
Was that Governor Salucci on time, on budget?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tell Mr. Mason that we're really appreciative of making that thing happen for the amount that was requested.
All right. Good? Good. Calling it 7:32.
What's the date of the next meeting?
Ah.